Hi, my name is Kimberly and welcome back to my channel. It's Only Homeschooling. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a former middle school guidance counselor turned homeschool mom of one. Today, I'm going to share with you what I have learned over the years from our son's Occupational and Physical Therapy crew. If you like this video, please be sure to click the like button below and maybe consider subscribing to my channel. This lets YouTube know that you like this kind of content, and it will let the algorithm know that you want to see more content like it. So I was actually inspired to make this video by a friend and fellow homeschool mom, Leilani Melendez of Living with Eve. I'm going to put a card up here showing you the video that she made talking about what she learned from her child's physical therapist. So I thought I would share with you some of the things that I have learned from my child's experience through OT and PT over the past 7 years. So a little bit of background, my son is 10. He began physical and occupational therapy when he was 2 years and 11 months. He has a history of developmental coordination disorder, also known as dyspraxia. He was recently diagnosed with dysgraphia, and he also has sensory integration dysfunction, or more commonly known as sensory processing disorder. If you're curious as to what led us to confirm a diagnosis of developmental coordination disorder, or what led us to seek out therapy services, I will make another video on that. Just let me know in the comment section below. I do have one video currently posted on my channel where it shows first steps, and I'll put a card to it up here and a link in the description box below, where it is showing how his development was a little bit different, looked a little bit different. We call him our favorite little penguin, the way he sort of just kind of walked, and it was super cute. But I put those videos out there not only because everybody thinks their kid is cute, but also because it lets you know if you are starting to see kind of signs like we did early on, that there may need to be, you might need to kind of press with your pediatrician or your physician for you to get referrals for evaluations like that. I know we kind of had to press for the issue to get the diagnosis, especially because in our case, our son was a preemie, and with preemies, they tend to go, oh, we adjust them until they're 2, so don't worry about those developmental milestones. We'll get to those a little later. And this can hopefully help you learn how to advocate for yourself. So definitely, one of the things that I learned early on was that I need to be an advocate for my son and for myself. As a parent, trust your instincts. Always trust your instincts. And I had to really push for those referrals. Now, I say that our son has been in therapy off and on since the age of 3 because there's a couple of different reasons for that. While early intervention is absolutely key and absolutely necessary to help your child's prognosis or their outcome and help them build stronger skills in their development, we faced a lot of battles early on. The insurance that we had at the time when our son was 3 did not cover the care. And at the time, financially, we had to switch between, we kind of had to choose sometimes between, are we going to go through sessions of occupational therapy for right now, or are we going to go through sessions of physical therapy right now? So sometimes we would do those therapies concurrently, and sometimes we would take a break from one and do several sessions of PT, reach the goals that we had set there, and then move on back to OT and flip-flop back and forth as we reached our goals. Either way, he has been in some form of therapy since the age of 3. And while we have been at the same therapy location, we love, love, love Therapedia. I cannot say enough wonderful things about Therapedia of Keller. We have actually switched physical therapists over time. This had nothing to do with the fact that we didn't love our original physical therapist, Miss Erin. It had to do when it was time, where I was talking about earlier, where we were switching back between different segments or cycles of therapy is what I'm going to call it, and it was time for us to end our current goals with we'd reached our current goals in OT, so we were going to switch back and do some PT to complement that. Miss Erin had gotten to a stage where both of her children were in college, so her schedule, she was scaling back on how she worked because she was going to go see her children at college. So we started with a new physical therapist, Miss Shelley. But I cannot say enough wonderful things about the therapy crew at Therapedia. Now, Miss Tara, on the other hand, our OT, Miss Tara is like family, and she has been with us throughout the entire journey since our kiddo was 3. The one thing that we loved so much about Therapedia was not just that we still love about them is not just that they have a heart for children, because they absolutely do, but the fact how well the team works together with one another. When you have a child who is attending multiple different therapy sessions or different services or requiring multiple services, it is so important, whether you are attending them in the same house or you're attending them at different practice locations, that those therapists have an open lines of communication and that they talk to one another. And that is absolutely key so that they can work together, because they all have the same shared goal, essentially. Treatment goals and what they're working on with their individual specialties might be a little bit different, but the ultimate goal is to help your child succeed. Everybody needs to be on the same page. That's just good continuity of care. Let's jump into it. I stress that point more than anything about how communication is key. That point is so important that I have learned more than any other point so far, simply because recently my son needed to attend some pelvic floor PT. And so we went out and had to find a Therapedia. That is not a service that they provide. So we received some referrals from our pediatrician and from our son's urologist, pediatric urologist, so that we could find different therapists who specialized in that. In our area, there's not a whole lot. So we were given a choice of about 3, and we had to drive to find those. So we went to the first one. Out-of-cost care was absolutely ridiculous. That's another whole set of worms that I'll address on another day, where they were basically charging hospitalist fees and like $350 an hour for sessions. I didn't have $350 an hour to pay for sessions, so I had to look for other options. But moving on to communication. We went to our first referral. The evaluation went well. That day, the clinician had really wonderful rapport with our son. Our son seemed excited with this clinician, and I thought things were going to go well. Traditionally, when you go and have an evaluation, the evaluating clinician will give you a report, and they'll bring it back to you so that you can then review, okay, here's the assessments that were given, here's what we found. You're going to be completing a lot of different paperwork as well, just like you would go to any other doctor's appointment, because you know the background and the history of your child. Long story short, they compile all of this, they do all of their assessment into the first meet and greet session, and then they should, standard practice, something I did in my own practice as well when I did evaluations for therapy, as a clinician, as a counselor, they should give that report back to you, explaining what their findings were, what their recommendations are, and what goals they see fit for therapy for your child. And that information should be explained to you in layman's terms, in common language that you can understand as the parent. You didn't go to school to be the therapist, or even if you did, you are there as a parent and not as a clinician. Communication should be very clear for you to be able to ask those questions. You shouldn't look at the report and be completely confused and then can be completely lost. So when you get that report back, go home, sit down with it, take the time to look over it, and read it once through first time, come back, look at it later, write notes in the margin for what you want to know about that report and what questions you want to ask the clinician. Then ask that clinician to get back to you and talk with you about the report. All of that is standard, and I will make a video about what to expect when you are going to have an assessment or what an assessment is like. Our experience was nothing like that. First of all, it took me 6 weeks to get a report from the clinician. 6 weeks. I don't care how big your caseload is or how busy you are, at a minimum, it should take you anywhere from maybe 2 weeks max. That's the longest it's ever taken. 10 days to 2 weeks max. Business days, not 2 calendar weeks, to get a report back on your child. Otherwise, how are you going to know if you're going to proceed with course of therapy there with them, and how can you plan financially or in your schedule or anything else? It's just proper professional practice. This particular clinician, they will remain nameless for now because I don't know how their experience is with other therapies. It was like pulling teeth to get the report back. That was my first red flag. My second red flag was I had asked them to please be sure to reach out and contact and make a connection with Therapedia or our treating clinicians. It did not happen. That is vital. what we were doing at this separate therapist's office was going to be a complement to what the clinicians were going to do at Therapedia. They are all a part of the same treatment team. These red flags were so severe enough for me as a parent, as a mom, as a clinician in the past, where I've worked with clients before and I knew what I would do in my practice, were enough for me that when I finally was able to schedule an appointment and chat with the clinician on the phone, what I was met with was not, I thought, oh, okay, there's probably been something busy that's happened. Everybody gets busy, these things happen. But I was met with more of resistance, such as, how dare I ask such questions, or questioning me as opposed to being open and honest. Part of that is just part of establishing a therapeutic relationship. We call it informed consent. Your clients should be able to freely ask you anything that's on that report or anything about what it means, without hesitation and without trepidation. Communication is key. If you are not having an open and honest communication, and that flows both ways, with your therapist, or you feel like you can't ask your therapist anything about your child's therapy because they are still your child at the end of the day. They might be their client, but they are still your child, and you are still a customer if you just look at it at the end of the day. It's time to move on and find a different therapist. You know, how you communicate with your therapist, that is something that's going to have to be personal between you and the therapist, but make sure that you respect the boundaries of that communication. With one of our therapists, it's very open, we text, but I had her permission ahead of time, and I try to be respectful during times like weekends or evenings. She has a family too. When I openly want to ask a question, or a lot of times if something just comes into my brain, I'll go, oh, look, this happened, or we've reached a wonderful milestone, then I will send her a text and share that to her. I have had other therapists in the past for other things, such as play therapy, or even when I was a therapist myself. I preferred, unless it was an emergency, to have communication with me in a different way. But I made those boundaries very clear. So it is very important, that you discuss that openly when your therapist. Is it email? Is it text? Is it phone call? And what are the parameters or the boundaries of how and when, in what ways we should communicate? And don't forget to look out for these videos coming up in the rest of our vlog series on lessons and wisdom I have learned from our OT PT crew.